Hey everyone. How is everybody on this rainy Montreal day? Gray, rainy, and radio time day. It's kind of looks like that. One of those days when you just, let's stay inside and do some radio. Yeah. And of course, test new antennas. Da-da-da. Hey everybody, welcome aboard. This is the Shortwave radio show, and we are live from Montreal, Quebec, Canada. And of course, this is a show where we talk about radio, we talk about everything below 30 megahertz. We answer questions, and we listen to the bands, tune around. We'll see today. I'm trying to compare two radios, well, two antennas actually. Today we'll be tuning both the SDR that is still on my sloper in the backyard and my Icon that is today on a W6 LVP mag loop, magnetic loop that I will be talking about. But there's not going to be a lot of details because it's still not set up at the position where I want it. And I still need to test it out correctly before I can say I'm impressed. But already I see some results that are interesting. So we'll talk about that today, of course, and some other things. And of course, my co-host, Mr. Paul the Cat, is here to say hi. So here's Mr. Paul saying hello to everybody. And yes, this is an Amiga 500 right here. So Mr. Paul saying hello to everyone. And of course, I got my beer. Cheers, everybody. It's a peach IPA called Autre Chose. Autre Chose means something else. And it's a peach flavored IPA. Which isn't too bad considering that I don't usually like IPAs much. So Mr. Paul saying hello to everybody, the co-host. Of course, with sleepy eyes, as you see, he's like, had these little sleepy eyes. He was actually preparing for a nap, and when I start talking live, for some reason, he just gotta show up and say hello. So it's Mr. Paul. Let's just put it a little down so you guys can see his face a little bit. So nice to have everybody on board. Hope you will have a nice show today. We, of course, are live every Fridays, 2000 hours Universal Time, and we talk about radio. My name is Gilles. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. There's a chat room with fantastic people where you can actually interact and hopefully have fun, answer questions, or ask questions, because one of the things that, of course, we do here is try to answer questions that people have on radio subjects. But the first and the most important thing is at least having fun with our geek radio hobby that we have. And hope that you guys enjoy the show today. So, I'm going to say hi to people in the chat room first. And so here we go. Brett Wayne, nice to have you on board, my friend. KC2NXP. Bobby Burgess from Morgan City, Louisiana. That is WA5107SWL for his call sign, his radio call sign. We have Elton Byington. Nice to have you on board. And yes, the antenna finally got released from customs, as they were actually, it stayed there for a week. So there we go. Here you go, man. So it stayed there for a week, and before they released it. So it's nice to have it. It's always long, when these things get stuck somewhere like that and you're waiting for your package. Always too long. Matt, W0MDK. Hope that you, well, I'm sure that you'll be okay with your ham radio exam tomorrow. and that you'll be happy, and you'll have more privileges on the bands for your advanced ticket there. Bobby Burgess, nice to have you here. Loving the Rowdy Wow R108, and he's using it with Sanjay and a NT60 antenna. So really nice little radio, actually. I enjoy mine. Rowdy Wow R108, really nice, honestly. Richard Cook, nice to have you on board from the UK. We have WOHP 1390, nice to have you on board from Ohio. W8PRR. We have Nick Amendov from Romania, nice to have you here. Kevin Wood from Nova Scotia, Canada, nice to have you on board. Ray Lyle, nice to have you on board from Southern Illinois. Joe Rutman, nice to have you here from Chicago area. Always nice to have all of you here, of course, as usual. What else do we have? What else do we have? We have Rufus Newt, nice to have you on board from the Laurentian Valley in Ontario. Pretty cool. PLF Radio, bonjour et bienvenue. Toujours un plaisir de vous avoir parmi nous. De la France, Buster Brown, nice to have you on board. Matambali, nice to have you here from Colorado. Mr. Paul the Cat asking for for me to take some time. Hans, nice to have you here, my friend. Bonjour, hi, guten tag, ni hao, and all the rest. Sheldon, nice to have you here from I don't know why there's that debate. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, there's so many other things we can talk about. And bonjour, hi is for some reason such a complicated thing. Oh, man. Yes, the SDR is a bit green today because I've changed some of the color settings. I've been playing around with the color settings. So, that's why it's a little greenish. Brent, nice to have you on board. And nice to have you here from Brockville, Ontario. We have Roberto Rotas, nice to have you here. And nice to have you on board. Buenas tardes. Chin chin. Absolutely. Cheers and chin chin, everybody. Keegan, nice to have you on board from Northwest Arkansas. Nice to have you here. René Charbonnier. Bonjour, nice to have you here from the Netherlands. Pretty cool. Ray Bennett. Nice to have you here. Ça va bien? Michael B. Nice to have you here from Warsaw, Poland. Nice to have you here, my friend from Poland. Hans is EA5 ITG from Spain. Alicante says 73. Nice to have you here, my friend. What else? PLF Radio, when's my turn for the ham exam? It's going to go somewhere in late summer, early fall. As summer will close down, I will be getting my ham ticket. I'll be checking that out for sure. W5KJL, nice to have you on board with beautiful weather in Central Texas. Vancouver Island DXer, nice to have you on board, Brian. V7AUL. And this weekend will be dedicated to antenna work after you got these 2 trees planted. Cool. Ray Lyle says lots of static crashes on the 49 meter band in Southern Illinois. Possible because there's a lot of there's a lot of rain, and I do believe I heard a few static crashes a little earlier while trying to play around with the antennas. Keegan is listening in with his Ethan Grundig Field BT radio. Randall Klons, nice to have you here from Northeast Illinois. Pretty cool to see all of you on board. What else do we have? Plus Zero, nice to have you on board, watching from EM15 GE. Kilowatt, nice to have you on board. Keegan is watching from EM26T. Grid squares. I don't like grid squares by heart much. Ray Lyle says, I use the dark color scheme on SDR Uno. It's easy on my eyes at night. Yeah, there's different. I've been playing around with the color schemes. I've been playing around with the different settings of, how the contrast and everything. Just trying to get the best grasp of, because when you don't set the contrast really well, sometimes a weak signal is difficult to see in the waterfall. So I'm trying to find the perfect setting that makes it easier to actually spot that there's a little signal, a weak signal somewhere in that waterfall. Brian Penny, nice to have you on board from Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Mike Rivera, nice to have you here from California, my friend. Pretty cool. And we have Rogerio Rocha, nice to have you on board, Roger, from the Azores. Nice to have you here. Pretty cool. Jeffrey Kropp, nice to have you on board from New Hampshire. Ray in Clayton, North Carolina, nice to have you on board, my friend. Plaza is aka N5UWY. Nice. Ryan Penny received a QSL from CFRX this week. Cool. That's fun. That's always fun. That's always fun. Rekray, nice to have you here from Turkey, my friend. Ray Bennett says, hey there, my French is very limited, sitting at a truck stop wishing I had a beer. What are your thoughts on the 350DL Grundig? The Grundig S53DL, I do have one here, is a nice portable receiver. It's fun if you like big portables. It has fantastic sound. It's quite sensitive. I mean, you'll receive pretty much anything. It doesn't have single sideband, but it's a nice receiver. Drifts a little bit. You'll have to, retune a little bit from time to time because it's an analog radio with a frequency digital display. So it does drift a little bit. But overall, if you get it at a cheap price, overall it's not a bad deal. I remember when it came out, they were completely nuts. They were selling that thing for like $200 or something. And I was like, that's not worth $200. But I paid mine at sale at, I think it's Radio Shack, or maybe, if it was not Radio Shack, it was when they had actually changed to Circuit City here in in Montreal, when they changed their names by the source by Circuit City. I believe it's when they did that change, and I got it for like $69, brand new. That was a good deal, and it's worth $69. Yes, it's really, really nice, and it's nice, big, portable, nice audio. I think if you're thinking of purchasing one for a nice price, I think you'll be happy with it. It's a nice little radio. It's one of those nice radios. Helen Willie, nice to have you here, my friend. 51 years in the radio DXing hobby and starting year 52 on this Monday, June 17th. Wow. Oh, man. Time flies, eh? I still remember. I'm, 2019, that means in August. Sometime in August. I don't remember what date. But sometime in August, I will be starting my 38th years. Because in August, it's going to be 37 years that I started listening to Shortwave. Really knowing what Shortwave was all about, actually. And because it's a little more than that, with the portable receivers and stuff that my dad had and all, but I didn't know what SW meant on the radios. Basically the probably I'm close to 40 years of radio listening, honestly. I can't really I try to remember, but I don't remember much on the first multi-band that my dad had. Back then, my dad was building a shack up north in La Conception, Quebec, which was in the middle of the woods almost, in front of a lake. And I remember bringing along a multi-band radio back then. But I had this transition because when I was like 12 years old, I was, I discovered music. Really intense. And back then there were no, there were no phones to listen or iPods or stuff. I had my cassette player with tons of cassettes that I was listening to music with. And I had a little AM FM radio that had a cassette player. So I had the multi-band, but when we would go up north where it would have been probably an interesting idea to bring the multi-band, most of the time I would bring out my tape cassette instead so I could listen to my favorite songs until the batteries wore out because we didn't have electricity up north. And when the batteries were out, well, the tape would kind of slow down listening to the music. So, of course, I had nothing I could do, and there was no real store real close. So I would then stop listening to my music, but I probably would have enjoyed having the multi-band. But I remember I would alternate with multi-band, would see what I can hear, and it was kind of hard there because I didn't know what shortwave was all about. And one of the things is that VHF, UHF over there was not very good because we were surrounded by mountains everywhere. So there was pretty much nothing except long distance AM. And on the FM band, I was able to hear only one station from that place. When I would play with the antenna, I could hear a rock station out of Ottawa. And that was the only FM station that I could actually listen to over there. Which probably means it was an amazing place to DX the FM band, and probably still is today when Tropo or when Sportic eSkip brings these stations to life. But I'll be at 37 years of listening, officially listening. I always start my listening and my when I talk about this, I always start with, well, I did this. I always say my year number one is when I had my realistic DX 100, because that's when I started listening really intense to shortwave radio, honestly. So that'd be 37 years. That means I'll be starting my 38th years, which is not nice when you think about it, because it means you're older, but it's life. It's life. And at least, I was part of that time when there was still tons and tons of things on the international broadcast bands that were just amazing to listen to. PLF radio, yes, I know there's a signal to noise ratio and all of that. I will be testing that out once it's in the proper position, because right now it's just at the corner of my balcony in the back. Where it is now, it's probably just about a feet from the Bell telephone wire and their fiber optic cable that I suspect is creating noise. So all of that means that it's not positioned where I want it right now. But I do still, after only using it for a couple of hours, I do have kind of an interesting opinion of different things, though, on it. Coaster 2301 Productions, nice to have you on board from San Diego, California. Eddie Gomez, nice to have you on board. Thank God it's Friday. Nice to have you here from the Netherlands, my friend. Always cool to have you on board. What else do we have? John McMullen, nice to have you here from a rainy London, and here's a rainy Montreal right now. 2E0TDR/A. Nice to have you here, Mr. Jim. Ray Lyle says, I wish the frequency numbers in SDR Uno was a different color, or you could change it. Too much dull blue and white. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't checked if we can change the color scheme of SDR Uno and get different colors, because yes, that could be interesting to play around with. I think that would be something nice that we could be allowed to do, is to change the colors. Maybe we could. Maybe that's a request we can actually add if we can't. Because you're right. It'd be nice to, I like to personalize my own screens. An example of that is when I use when I control the icon here, I use an old version of Am Radio Deluxe. And when you use Am Radio Deluxe, you can customize everything on the control of the radio. And it'd be fun to have that here also. Have Blassie, nice to have you here, my friend, from Oakland, California. Nice to have you back. Coaster 2301 Productions will try to pick up Noah 17. Kevin Wood, the source by Circuit City. Rufus Newt says, we sold 350 at the source for $199. However, sale price was always $99. Yeah, when I got it at $69, I think it was like they wanted to just get them out of the store. And I think the one I bought was the last one. I even think the one I bought was the one that they had in demonstration on in the store. Mikael Donmaj, nice to have you on board. And I will not try to pronounce that in Icelandic. Richard Chiquan, bonjour et bienvenue VE2NM. VE2NM, nice to have you on board, my friend. Ray Lyle, 37 years of listening for him this year. So we're quite close, actually. Douglas Elliott, nice to have you on board from the UK. And what else do we have? Bobby Burgess, Radio R108 is worth $52 for sure. Terry Cook, nice to have you here. KF7BQ. Brent says, I found a Kenwood TS120S transceiver, VFO and power supply at a local electronics recycler. It uses a 6-pin connector for the DC cable. Are the 6-pin cables generic, or do I need a specific one? Oh, that's interesting. What I would do, honestly, is because you could try to find a power supply, and I don't know if they all have the same type of, sometimes they do have kind of a same power supply type, but it's not always the case. Sometimes they keep the same connector, but not necessarily the same pinout. I would go on the internet and find a pinout of the 6-pin and check out what they are exactly. What do they do exactly, and maybe try to rig a regular power supply. You can check that out. Keegan's been listening to Shortwave for about over 20 years. Wow. Yeah, that I would say that what Plus Zero says, the 6-pin connector within Kenwood themselves is probably the same thing, I would say. Tony Turtle, nice to have you here. Terry Colgan, clock's correct this week. Of course it's correct. I tried to. I was getting a really good reception of WWV an hour ago, and of course I used the opportunity to put the clock correctly. It's directly darn on the signal. So Bobby Burgess has been listening to Shortwave since the turn of 2000. Whoops. I lost the turn 2017. Cool. A newbie. And I hope you're having fun. Keegan, 20 plus years of shortwave listening. First station I heard, WWV. Most likely. The first station that I know of, because of its ID, and that was before the DX100, BBC World Service. But when I got my DX100, the first station I heard that evening or that day, wow, I can't really recall the first official one. I do recall that the first evening I did hear Call Israel, and thinking, wow, that's a station from Israel. This is amazing. Because yes, they had a North American service in English back in 1982. I actually found a schedule on one of the well, I was searching for shortwave stuff online. I found a frequency schedule by time that dates back to somewhere like 1985. And when you start looking at all the stations and the frequencies, you're like, wow. You just look at that and you're like, amazing. There are so many things to listen to. And it makes you think. I mean, you look at that and you're like, whoa. And there was news, by the way, and we talked about it on the International Radio Report last week. News of All India Radio that could be leaving the airwaves on shortwave. So if you're listening to All India Radio, I think it would be very, very important, very, very important to write to them and let them know that it's important that they keep their shortwave services. Terry Colgan, 61 years off and on. Yeah, I think everybody was off and on. I had periods of time when I wasn't listening much. So there were times I was listening a lot. There were times when I wasn't listening a lot. It all depended. There's so many things that distract us in life from different things. And I would say the times I listened the least to the radio was always the times when I would have a full-time job. When I had a full-time job, it seems like I did listen a little bit, but I wouldn't listen that much. Except at specific times, sometimes I would, but most of the times I'd listen less. And when I had more time on my hands, that's when I would listen more. Rufus Newt, 40 plus years. Have a blast. He started in 79 with a multi-band next to, okay. Well, this one is a CB60. You're referring to this SW60 that I have over there, but it looks exactly the same except it has shortwave bands. But yes, it's probably it's shortwave 60 you had. And, well, that started you. And considering, it was amazing because considering that when you do tune these today, and by the way, I am going to take that shortwave 60, and it's going to be my next what if I only had that as a radio to listen to shortwave. I think it's going to be a challenge and interesting to see what I can do with it. Will be like listening from 1980. But back then there were so many stations and there were so many strong signals, Coaster 2301 Productions, been a listener for 2 months now. The good thing about being a new listener is that you don't have that nostalgia of us older guys that remember what the bands were like 30, 40 years ago. Because if you ask anybody that listened for 30, 40 years, one of the first things they're going to tell you is, wow, shortwave sure has changed. And back then there were so many things to listen to. It was crazy. Oh, man. Elton Byington vlogs 65 years of shortwave listening, starting with an RCA Victor console radio with 31 meter band spread in my aunt's living room. First QSL, AFRTS, the Armed Forces Radio and Television Service in Los Angeles. Wow. I don't know why. I've heard AFRTS so many times in the 80s, and I've never QSL'd them. In the 80s, one of the biggest problems was getting the postal address of stations. That was kind of a difficult one. Either you had to listen and hope that they give their postal address. So one day you did, it was kind of cool, but it was kind of complicated. I remember sending letters that the only thing that was on the envelope was, for example, Radio Beijing, China. and that's it. And being quite surprised at receiving a response. I was like, well, I guess they know where Radio Beijing goes. But I mean, if you didn't have the postal address, you were taking a chance here. If you didn't have the address, you didn't have anything, you were just like, okay, well, Voice of Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria. Let's hope it goes there, and they're receiving it. And I don't remember the first time I had a official list of postal address of stations, but I remember if it was a magazine or if it was a club bulletin. I don't remember exactly, but I remember one day I had a big list, and I was happy because I was like, oh man, full postal address with postal code and everything. I was also very happy when I got my first, the $2, World Radio TV Handbook, and I guess today, the World Radio TV Handbook, if you're looking for emails and if you're looking for postal address of stations, this is probably the only thing left that has very detailed information of where to write for the different stations. So this is the 2017. I'll probably get the 2020 edition. It's going to be the 2020 edition this year. So I'm probably going to get the 2020 edition later this year. That is probably the last book that has really detailed postal and email. Even the internet is not that easy sometimes to actually get an email out of a station. So many times I've been searching for correspondence with stations and where to send a reception report and stuff, and it's not super easy. It's not always easy to find even on the internet. That is, if you're writing for QSLs, if you want to have correspondence with these stations, I gotta say the World Radio TV Handbook for that aspect is your best book, honestly. So I remember that, and I remember the Passport to World Band Radio was nice, because Passport to World Band Radio would have every station with their address, and it was nice because they would have details of what you can receive. They would send calendars, pennants, QSLs and all, stickers. They would tell you all the things that you can actually get from these stations. Oh, by the way, Brian Penny, I don't know if you heard, but I heard your name on Voice of Vietnam. What was it? I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday, when they had their mailbag show. And I think you're the first letter they read on the air. And they actually told you they're sending you QSL cards and other goodies. So I immediately heard, when I heard your name, I was like, oh, Brian Penny from the USA on Voice of Vietnam. So I don't know if you heard, but your name was mentioned on Voice of Vietnam this week. Coaster says, I've been a web SDR listener for about 2 years. Brent says, been listening off and on since 1976, about 43 years ago or so. Kenwood Wood says, lots of FMDX on the drive to and from Halifax today. Wow, cool. PLF Radio since 2010. Matambali since 1968. Mark Cope, nice to have you on board, my friend. From Dallas, Texas. No problems if you're a little late. What else do we have? Yeah, if you don't transmit with a transceiver, 2-3 amps is enough for the receive. That's what I do actually right now, because I don't have a proper power supply for the Yaesu FT450. But I plug it in there. I got a 2 amp wall wart that supplies 12 volts, and it works great. But you won't be able to transmit on 2 amps. You'll need that big power supply with 25 amps. Tony Turtle says I received a shortwave AM/FM SSB receiver back in the mid-70s for a Christmas present from my folks and was amazed here in Australia and other countries. It was amazing. I still remember my first night with my DX100 being just like, wow. Redelva65, nice to have you here. Plus Zero says, got an Eldon crystal kit for Christmas 1970. Didn't get serious about listening until about 72 on a G transistor. Got a beat up multi-band Victor 1974 and found WWV. Never looked back. Cool. Alan Green, nice to have you here, my friend. Alan Green started in 81, heard the number stations Lincolnshire Poacher, and was hooked. How can you not be hooked listening or hearing that? It sounds creepy and weird. I mean, you're like, what is that? And I'm sure that's the first thing you ask yourself. What is that? Oh, man. Tony Turtle says, broadcast like fishing, throwing the line as far as you can, catch anything swimming in the air. Yeah, absolutely. Scott Cranston, nice to have you here. Started listening in the early 90s, caught the bug monitoring airplanes over the Atlantic on HF. Cool. PLF radio, can your loop antenna be used with your portable radios or overload them? And can it be used indoors too? Okay, let's talk a little bit about it, and I'll continue the chat. I'm about 12 minutes behind you guys right now, so I'm at 4:25 at that question. So hang in there if you ask a question, or we're gonna get there at some point. It can technically be used anywhere. Of course, the best install is outdoors. But I did try it inside. The first thing that I did is try it in my office right here and see what it did. And in my office, it received shortwave, but it was very, very noisy. So I wanted to have a very, kind of a very quick setup with whatever I had. So I looked outside and I said, where can I put it in a very quick setup that I can quickly remove also, because they're doing some work on the house. So I will actually be without any antennas of any kind plugged in for about 5 days. So I thought, how can I set it up really quickly and have a way of removing all the setup very quickly also for when they come on Monday and start working on the house. So I actually, the way it's designed was kind of easy. I simply put a broomstick outside, and I put the antenna on the broomstick that is clamped with plastic tie wraps to my balcony. So it's solid and it's temporary, but at least it's outdoors and it works. And I went just before the show, I went to the electronics stores not far from here to get myself coax, and that has they have a 12 feet coax that has 12 feet RG59 with BNC connectors on each end, because for the power inserter I needed that, and it's not included with the antenna. So I went to get that. I went to get a few things I needed anyways, and I set it up temporarily on the back. It's actually set up temporarily so I can actually leave it like that for the weekend, and I'll bring it back inside when they start on Monday morning doing the stuff. It's very noisy. Okay, and there's a few things I need to test out and try out. But it's less noisy than my sloper for some transmissions. You guys have seen one of my videos. Now, a lot of you have been telling me, and I totally understand, well, you should have, shown us on the same radio. And yeah, I know, but it's very complicated because I don't have a switch box. My RSP1A is an SMA antenna connector. This thing has whatever connector on it. So I don't have any way of doing that unless I start soldering a SMA connector after one of the coax, and it's getting complicated. So what I did is I did try it with my ICOM, which was the easiest because I had all the cabling, and switch between one signal and the other. And the results that you guys have seen, by the way, of Voice of America, that is easier to understand and to listen to on the SDR, on the loop, is exactly the same result I had on the ICOM if I had only the ICOM. It's just that to do a video on that was kind of complicated because I had to get up, unscrew the antenna connector, screw the other antenna connector, and blah, blah, blah. It was kind of complicated. It wasn't fast. It wasn't an easy way to do it. But the results were the same. So what you saw there, even though there was two different receivers and two different coax, they were the same if I applied just one and switched between the antennas. So, the result you've seen there is the result that was the same if I was using the same radio. Let's just say that. And basically, the other thing, because some of you have asked, could it be the coax that's the difference? And okay, both coaxes are exactly the same coax. They're exactly the same length. There shouldn't be a difference normally because they're the same thing. I do think it is because the loop does a better job at handling some of the noise. Now I still have a lot of noise, even with the W6LVP loop. But that could be, okay, I'm not going to pronounce myself at all on that aspect of the loop until I really play with it, which will be probably at the end of next week, and start positioning it at different places to see how it performs. Another thing I am curious to do, because it is powered by 12 volt wall wart, which is a linear power supply, because it does, to reduce noise. It's not a switching power supply. One of the things I am wondering is, once it's powered with the power supply, is there noise from the internal wiring of my home that's injected in the loop by that connector, by that 12 volt power supply? So the other thing I will do is power the loop on batteries and see if there's a difference. If there is, then I know that one of the things I need to fix is getting less noise through the power adapter, because I will try that. It really came to mind today, because I bought tons of things for the antenna at the electronics store, including a long power strip, so that I could actually plug it in, because it needs to be powered to work, because it has an amplifier. The loop has an amplifier in it. And of course, if I switch off or on the power, you see a big difference. Switch it off, the signal level drops, the noise drops also. Power it on, of course, the amplifier amplifies everything, including noise, which is normal. It amplifies radio frequencies. I have several things I will need to look at. One is where I will position it, because that will be important. I've got 3 spots in mind right now. One is next, or not far, pretty high and not far from my VHF UHF mobile vertical. The other one is higher than it is now, but at the spot where it is now, which I don't think is a good idea. Or my front balcony with a different way of bringing the cabling in. One thing for sure, I will test all the positioning and do tests comparing both the sloper and the loop. I can't really pronounce myself right now on is it better and is it removing noise and is it, I will not go there because I haven't tested enough and I'm not set up to give an opinion. There's one opinion I will give that I already understand. If you don't have place for a wire antenna of any kind, if you don't have a place for a really big antenna of any kind, what I can tell you already is that that loop, even though it's, small compared to 75 feet of wire for a sloper, receives shortwave as well as my sloper. That means that loop just on the back balcony is as good a shortwave antenna as my sloper or a long wire that you would have outside. So if you're looking for something that's more compact that you could put out on your balcony or something, well, if you can't put out a wire, that receives as well. I already know and I already see that. So that means it's a good antenna because, it's just, a loop. It's not that big of a loop. It's surprising that it actually gets the same signals everywhere. There's no signal that I hear on the sloper that I don't hear on the loop. And often, not everywhere, but that, once again, I won't pronounce myself yet. It's a very temporary setup, and I haven't tested it enough to give an opinion. But in some cases, I get it even better on the loop than I get it on the sloper. But that, we'll have more tests, and I'll have a lot of videos, because I know that one of the things lacking on my channel, by the way, is antenna videos. And a lot of people have been asking me, antennas, can you talk about antennas? Well, I think this summer is going to be antenna video summer, because the loop, the sloper, I plan on installing, just for the fun of it, a brand new 100 and I think it's 120 feet of wire when I go to the telephone pole on the other side. So I plan on trying that also and trying different things. So of course we're going to check it out. Indoors, I put it close to the window here, and it's very noisy, but I did get some shortwave stations. Can it be used indoors? Maybe if you have a room that has less noise than others. So if, for example, here my kitchen is the kind of the quiet place, maybe I would set it up near a window in the kitchen, for example. It could kind of be interesting. So that means it could be portable enough if you can't, live in a condo. And one of the rules of the condo is, well, you can't put out an antenna. You know what? It could actually be, in certain circumstances, a good antenna to listen to shortwave from inside your condo. It's possible. But I'll be testing it a lot more, so I'll give my opinion for sure, and I will give my honest opinion of is it worth the price or not? Because you gotta think about it. The antenna, with everything that came with it that I needed, low pass and high pass filters to remove interference from FM and medium wave stations, which is already on the antenna when you get it. Well, in my case, is with the exchange in currencies from US to Canadian dollars, with the $60 taxes I had to pay when the postman arrived, that is a $500 antenna. A $500 Canadian antenna. So it's not for everyone's budget also. I mean, there's not that many people that will spend $500 on an antenna. I did it because of multiple things. I have this channel and I wanted to talk about it. I need to try it to see if I can get better reception or shortwave. And technically it gets kind of pays itself in a way for me. You know, when I buy a shortwave radio, when I buy an antenna, it kind of repays itself because all the videos I'm going to do here are monetized, and that monetization will, of course, kind of give back the money that I kind of purchased. There's your donations also that help out, and that make me, you know, the payback part of the equipment. And, you know, I want to talk about these things, and hey, we got it. And the last question, because a lot of people have been saying, oh, why didn't you get a Wellbrook? It's the same thing. It's just that it's made by in the USA. But in every tests and every videos and everything that I've seen, it performs as well as a Wellbrook. It's a Wellbrook replacement, except that it's made in the US. So it's kind of less expensive in North America than getting the Wellbrook from the UK or whatever. So anyways, more to come on the details. Fanny Xenakis, nice to have you here, says Radio Toronto's first broadcast. Cool. David Snyder used to listen to Call Israel. I remember Call Israel a lot, listening to their English and French news bulletins. Maglone, nice to have you on board. How many of you keep a logbook? I used to log everything and keep a logbook in books and paper books. I probably got a box full of logbooks from the 80s and the 90s. I like that, and looking at the logbooks and seeing the stations over here. It is amazing, Brent, that we can hear signals from the other side of the world. Absolutely. Absolutely. Hev Blassie used to listen to Call Israel at 2230 and 31 meters. Yeah. There were quite a few things. I remember listening to it in French a lot. WOHP 1390 started listening in 65 with the Alecrafters S38 that he still has. I was just recapped. One of the first stations was Radio Canada International. Cool, Rick. Hey, Super 20 Dan, nice to have you here. From Florida. Yes, the BBC. You know, it actually reminds me of the good old days. The BBC has been coming really well on 7300 at 0-100 to 0-100 in North America and East Coast at least every evening. It's really, really nice because it reminds me of when the BBC was, you know, strong on 5975. Pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Tony Turtle, as tech evolves, we lose some traditions and gain new ones. Absolutely. Shortwave Bavaria, nice to have you on board, my friend. Hope you have a lot of fun with your new antenna. Wish you all the best. Good reception. Thank you, Stefan from Bavaria, Germany. 13LR009. Nice to have you here. Fanny Xanakis says, when I think of the abundance of stations back then, I really miss them. Imagine I ever would. But it was sort of special. It's another kind of hobby these days. It is different, but there's still stuff to listen to. Sheldon says something to check for at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 21:30 UTC on June 14th, which is today. Annual midwinter broadcast. Oh, really? It's today? Usually they do it around the solstice. 21:30. So that's in a little more than half an hour from now. What else do we have? Ray Lyle says, I mowed yards as a teenager just to get money to buy postage for letters to radio stations. The post office always looked at me like, oh, what is this kid doing? Same thing here. I was always, going every week. I would spend all the money that I actually had from back then. I'd spend it all on stamps. I mean, it's the only thing I would buy, and envelopes and paper to write my letters. Just crazy. So Sheldon, 2130 to 145, 5875. That 9445 might be one to check out from Warford. Maybe 7360 also, but 2145 would be one to check out. 2145, 9455. Sorry, let's check it out. Keith Logan, nice to have you on board, my friend. Yeah, Passport to World Band Radio was just so amazing. So amazing. What else do we have? Elton Byton says, my favorite Swiss shortwave service. Oh man, worked every time. I remember when you had to write these, names of countries in different languages and station, city names, and you're like, whoa, what the hell? And you had to compare because you just didn't know what you were writing down. Brian says, thanks, Jean. Mickey gave me a heads up, and I caught the show on WHRI. Too cool. It's always cool to listen to our names being mentioned on a shortwave broadcast. Oh, man. Calvin Morgan, nice to have you on board from South Wales, UK. Pretty cool to have you here. Yes, I saw the Eton satellite, new Elite satellite. It does look like an Eton E1. Sheldon Harvey says, your first night with your DX100. Everybody remembers their first nights. Don't get it wrong here, Sheldon. Oh, man. Bobby Burgess, going to the topic of eSkip. It is great when you get a full power station on broadcast FM, but how do you feel when you catch a low powered broadcast FM station? Oh, it's even more fun, of course. It's as fun. FM DXing, when you get anything you get, it's out of the ordinary, It's kind of cool. Brian Penny received a coveted Captain Morgan clock QSL this week. Cool. And of course, eSkip activity is not regular. It's not always, absolutely, that's for sure. Shortwave Bavaria says, I'm fascinated by the shortwave. My grandfather gave me a radio and I heard the East German number stations in Cold War and I'm addicted. Cool. Cool. Randy, Riverside, California. Nice to have you here. KN6BZJ. Well, I won't go into that debate, Tony Turtle, but technically if the Earth was flat and there would be an ionosphere, I mean, we would still have signals from shortwave bouncing around. But anyways, let's not go there, okay? Richard Cook has Thailand on 9920 kilohertz in English. You, Kevin Morgan, my first was... The heck was the moment on shortwave bands was accidentally hearing the practice runs of the U.S. nuclear launch codes being transmitted from the Looking Glass planes. Jeff King, nice to have you on board, my friend. David Arden, KJ4CMY, nice to have you here. Mark Cope started listening 2 years ago after reading a novel that mentioned Cuban pi numbers. Had to learn what that was all about. One thing led to another, and now I watch Jill every Friday. That's cool, Mark. I mean, it's kind of cool when you think about it. When you when you just kind of read about something, like number stations, and then suddenly find out that they're for real and you can listen to them on the shortwave bands. It's just crazy, So you, Kevin Morgan, is MW5 UFO in South Wales, UK. Matt says, that will be interesting to see. I have no discernible noise in my house when I use 120 volts on my loop. I can tell you, I will want to try it on batteries. Because one of the first things I want to see is there a difference? And if there is, then that means I will have to learn a way to power the loop. One of the things I see is that it doesn't require that much power because the power adapter is 200 milliwatts. So that means it doesn't use a lot of power. So we'll see. But I do want to see if the loop actually has more or less noise with the power supply. Maybe there's no difference, and if that is the case, then it's okay. But if it is, kind of interesting. Mr. G, nice to have you here. Yeah, well, the wall wart that comes with it is not a switching power supply, and it is a good one. So one of the things for sure is that the wall wart itself does not create noise in the loop. But the thing is, my internal wiring here in the house might be very noisy, and if it's that, then it could be inducing noise to the antenna since it's powering the antenna. So I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's quite all right. So yes, Elton Byington, I am looking at all the possibilities, including a rotator for the antenna. One of the things about the rotator is going to be dependent on one major thing. Because I can manually turn it right now, and of course I have manually turned the antenna in different orientations. First, to see my S meter on the icon, for example, to see where the S meter is the lowest in the noise, and comparing it also when I hear a station, testing it. So the thing is, the first thing, and actually the recommendation from within the antenna booklet, is you're better off putting the antenna in the lowest noise orientation than anything else. The shortwave signals, by their nature and the way that they propagate, okay, yes, you might have a slight difference by rotating the antenna, but it won't be an enormous difference, because once there's the scatter of all the signals everywhere, the signals on shortwave don't necessarily come from a very specific area. Even though they might be coming from a broadcaster in a certain area, like coming from the east, once they get the bounce and everything, it's not like receiving a local station that is very, very directed in an area, a very specific area. It's a little different. So on an antenna, on a loop antenna on shortwave, even though yes, there is some, you will have some somewhat of a gain or not of signals by turning it. It isn't as bad as even if it's fixed and not if you don't rotate it. And I will be checking that out. That's of course something I will be looking at and seeing of the importance of it. But from what I can see here, I think the importance will probably be more of putting it in one specific orientation and always leaving like that because that will be the one that has the lowest noise, which is more important than trying to chase the signal, because if I try to chase the signal to get more noise, it won't really help. So anyways, all of that is going to be tested, that's for sure. What else do we have? 5 megahertz. At this time of day, I would be more BPM than WWV, honestly. One thing for sure, the switching power supplies are the power supplies to avoid. Switching power supplies are very, very noisy. The electronics store, where I went this afternoon, they have, of course, I was looking at their power supplies. So they have a linear power supply with that's capable of 30 amps, which is huge and heavy. For the Yaesu F2450, I'm thinking of buying that. It's like $229 or something, and it's very heavy, of course. They have a switching one that gives 30 amps also, $99. And I asked the guy, and it's interesting because I mean it's an electronics store. They should, you would hope that the people there know a little more about stuff sometimes. But I asked him, I said, well, do you know of any amateur radio gear that people have used as switching power supply? And the first thing he says, oh, amateur radio gear, no noise, you better power off batteries. And that's where I kind of stopped. I was like, yeah, well, I'm not going to give 30 amps on a battery much, So anyways, I would not buy that 99 switching power supply. I'll buy that 229 linear, 30 amp power supply. It looks cool anyway with 2 meters and everything. Cherry DX, nice to have you here, my friend. David Arden says, I have an MFJ switching power supply for my ham transceiver. Induces no noise at all in my radio. When they are well designed, honestly, one thing that's very important, when they are well designed, switching power supply do not give out noise. When they are well designed, they actually can be very quiet. The problem, and that's where the problem is that the switching power supplies that we are confronted with every day are the cheap ones. These are really noisy, honestly. So we'll be looking at that. Terry Cook, magnetic loop should be able to null interference from directions other than the desired signal. What else do we have? Jeffrey Crop, the loop antenna I've got is the W6LVP loop. And that's what I received this week. Pete Logan says, just got me a realistic 10 band from 1975 radio from thrift store for $10. Cool. It's always fun. You go somewhere, you got a 5 or 10. When you get $5 or $10 radio somewhere, it's kind of always cool. Yeah. What I understand is that I will have a lot of noise even with the loop. So it will have to be positioned carefully to really get the maximum out of it. David Arden says, I like mine too. I was cautious of a switching power supply. I saw one on W5KUB and he liked it, so I bought one. Yeah, it's made and sold by Larry Plummer, W6LVP, absolutely. Keegan says, I also listen to AM and medium wave on the ICOM, the IC7006 with the loop when it's my turn to use the radio. Cool. Yeah, radio is magic, absolutely. Hey, Jerry. How do I like it? It's too early to really pronounce myself. Like I said earlier, it's if you don't have a lot of space, it's actually good. But I'm not yet pronouncing myself on anything. As long as it's not positioned right, and as long as it's not, giving me the results I hope. David in Barcelona, nice to have you on board, my friend. Okay, it's the 21st of the month, right? Not on the 14th. It's the 21st, right? That's what I was wondering. Okay, let's go down and see if everything. All right. Hey, D1 DJK, nice to have you on board, my friend. Oh, today's a test. Oh, okay. I got mixed. It's the test for the frequency. Okay. For some reason, I just didn't realize that today's a test. So BBC is testing the frequency today for next week's broadcast. Okay. We'll try 9455. I'll put 9455 here and see if I can hear anything. And 9455 on their 7360. So I'll try that. I'm hearing WRMI on 9395. So I'll be checking that out. Jillian Taylor, nice to have you here. Well, Radio TV Handbook is still going strong, I see. I had a copy in 75 as a kid. It was a great guide for shortwave. Thanks for your videos, Jillian. J4 VHJ. G4 VHJ. Nice to have you here. Yeah, there are Arecibo tests this week on 5125 kilohertz with tones and sweeps and all sorts of weird things happening. So many people wondering what these things were all about. Been hearing it a lot this week. Tony Turtle, the people who dope substances to make transistors are like wizards. Oh, it's pretty crazy. Vancouver Island DXer, do you ever hear hams using AM on 10 meter or 6 meter? I've heard a lot of AMers on 10 meters when propagation was right. Between 29,000 and 29,150. 29 to 29,150 is where I hear AMers usually. There was a time when propagation was really good that there were quite a lot of AMers on the bottom part of 29 megahertz. I've never heard AMers on 6 meters though. Keegan, it's midwinter because it's for their Antarctica base in the south, in the southern hemisphere. So it's a midwinter broadcast for the troops that are on their in Antarctica. Keegan. No live stream tomorrow, Keith Logan. Live streams on Saturdays are pretty much now off. I will be replacing them with random streams in the weekdays at different times. Bill Fagan, nice to have you here. Made my own magnetic loop using coaxial cables. Google for this on YouTube. Not difficult. Can save some bucks for your viewers. Yeah, I know. There's one from a ham radio operator. It's W or K something. And I know he's got one that he made himself, and it's pretty easy to actually make also. Ray Lyle, next Friday's show will be on summer solstice, longest day in northern hemisphere. Absolutely, we're getting there. Eddie Gomez, you should give the Megadipole MD300DX a try. I have incredible setup inside on the first floor. If I had all the money, I'd buy everything and we'd try everything with every setup and every position and every way of doing it. Sheldon Harvey, yes, absolutely. This Canadian International DX Club is a great little bulletin called The Messenger, and it's very, very nice to be part. I do the utility column. Mickey Dalmage makes the very interesting column. There's a lot of stuff in there that is for the radio listener of anywhere. It's not just Canada, even though it's called the Canadian International DX Club. So if you want to check a sample copy, cidxclub@yahoo.com. If you haven't asked, you can actually ask for a sample copy. It's an electronic publication in PDF. So will be it's a great little bulletin to check out. It's not expensive, $10 for a year, $25 for 3 years, and really nice. I think take the time to ask Sheldon for a sample copy of this. Yep, loops are good for nulling out QRM, so that's why I want to also position it correctly. Shady Pyro 90, nice to have you on board, my friend. Calvin Morgan says, biggest antenna has ever built was a horizontal loop for 80 meters. It took up the entire garden. It also tuned up to 40 meters very nicely. Really nice. Hey, Rick Kelly from Nova Scotia, nice to have you on board. The JK got tanks. Noises aren't a real big deal here outside house. It's maybe 10-20% better than inside. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I'll be testing it out, and Matt, if you can't send the link, send it through email. Send it to the official shortwave radio at gmail.com. I'll check it out there. But I will power it off of battery for sure. I've got some 12 volts lead acid batteries that probably will last forever, powering that thing in an evening. But I'll be checking it out for sure. It's the Talon Cell 12 volt 3000 milliamp hour portable battery. Okay, because I do have some lead acid batteries. Lead acid batteries for that I could use also. Oh, for sure, for medium wave DXing, that rotation might actually be very good, for sure. Dark Noise NL, nice to have you on board, my friend, from the Netherlands. What else do we have? Let's go there. I actually had some root beer. You guys talking about root beer? There's I went to A&W for a fish. They have a cod burger, and that I kind of like. Man, that root beer is so good. The A&W root beer is the best. What else do we have? Cyberflyer 1, nice to have you on board, my friend. And you know, another useful thing for the loop, because one of the things I would like to do with that loop is to have it installed in a way that it's not permanent, that it could be easy for me to just take it down when I need it and have it portable. For example, if I go to Perry Island, it'd be interesting to have that W6 LVP loop with, you know, battery power supply and DX with it, because I'm pretty sure that loop is probably as good, as not better. Would be better, like at Perry Island, it would be amazing, because it would be probably as good as a long wire for DXing. So that could be a lot of fun. Matt says the thing that's really great about W6 LVP is Larry Plummer himself. He knows how to answer the questions he asks. It might sound absurd at first, but so many people seem unable to answer the questions he asks. He actually pays attention to what you're saying and communicates clearly. Great service. And I've heard the same about the Wellbrook. One of the things that did impress me from Larry Plummer is that when I ordered my loop, he took the time to come back to me and say, okay, here's the thing. Where you live, that loop, you're not going to be happy with it because it's going to overload. And he actually gave me the link to, show me the power of how strong the medium wave and FM signals were where I live. And the first thing he said, look, I got two options here. I can refund if you want, because if you buy it just like that, you won't be happy, and I don't think you should buy it. So he's actually very honest, because he clearly said, look, in its basic form, you're not going to be happy with this. He said, look, you got to add $65 to the antenna, and we'll have a low pass and a high pass filter. It will remove the FM and the medium wave signals because they're going to overload the antenna. If you add that, now the loop's going to be a really good loop for you. So, with 65 US dollars more, but I was like, okay, if I'm all in, I'm all in. So just add it to the antenna. So he sent me an invoice and I added that. But, it's not everybody that would take the time to do that. A lot of guys out there would have sold an antenna and just say, oh, cool, you want an antenna? That's it. Here you go. He did take the time because he actually, in the message, he said, if you are planning to install that antenna at the place where it's shipping, it's not going to be a good antenna. Now, if you're planning to put the antenna at another spot where it's quiet, then okay. But where you live, if the shipping address is where the antenna is going to be installed, you won't be happy. And I did actually find that really, really nice that he took the time to do that. And not everybody would do that, honestly. It's really, 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 really nice. I think the guy wants you to have a good experience with whatever he's selling. That's for sure. Yeah, Matt, absolutely. Summertime is the big problem. In midday, summertime is the bands are really, really quiet. That's for sure. A giant motorhome with bristling with antennas at Bali. PLF Radio, a Recibo tests are heard in Europe. There's quite a few people I saw this week that were actually hearing it. I think even Richard Cook heard them. Yeah, he's like he's saying he heard them yesterday. 5125 kilohertz. David in Barcelona says one of my favorite projects for my upcoming holidays is a DIY loop for long wave, medium wave receive for the rotator. Found a 12-volt motor. And at its second QTH in the countryside. Cool. Sakura DX, nice to have you here from Japan. Pretty cool. Let's try to get a little faster. We're going down the list. Shortwave Bavaria says really great is the active dipole 0.2 to 60 megahertz from Stemfel from Switzerland. Check it out, really good shortwave antenna. The W6LVP loop is meant from really low frequency of like 1 kilohertz up to 30 megahertz with still some reception above 30, as he says in the comments. Let's all go to A&W. Now you guys are making me hungry for another cod hamburger. Kevin Wood. Apéro poulet for dinner here. No A&W. Yeah, here for dinner is going to be chicken. I bought a chicken. I'll be cooking a full chicken, which will be very, very good. And I'll have enough cooked chicken meat for 3 days of different meals. Oh, man. Matt says, Larry W6LVP made something similar for me. Man, I just lost it. He says, I've got 4 built-in notch filters and a low-pass filter at 45 megahertz. So it's really nice because he doesn't, he took the time. He took the time to actually look at that. Not everybody will do that. Sakura DX is now off from sea duties and now preparing for the German-Indonesian language test for fluency estimation. It's raining here. In the rainy season, ho ho, we're getting into summer. It doesn't look summer that much, but starting next week, there should be better weather here, honestly. Rufus Newt, I don't like colas. Thanks for the new root beers to check out. I don't drink colas a lot. Honestly, I've never been a big drinker of anything sugary. But root beer, A&W root beer is good. Matthew Kinney, nice to have you here. Stupid question. You don't have to answer this, but I have seen you off and on for years, and you know a lot about hams. So why are you not one? I am going to be one this year. But the simple answer to that is that listening was for me enough. And there was no urge to really get my ham ticket. Because listening was what I liked. And that said, I know that once I get my ham ticket, I'm probably going to be on the bands all the time because I'm going to enjoy myself. But I was just satisfied with listening. And you know what? I have a lot of hams that actually tell me, Matthew, over time, that they have their ticket and everything, but they just listen or almost only listen. So, I think that's that's pretty much the answer I have. But now this year I'm getting my ham ticket because one of my fans got me a Yaesu FT450 transceiver. So I would actually, in response to that, have promised that this year is the year I'm getting my ham ticket, for sure. So I'll be a ham, and maybe I'll be talking all over the world suddenly. Okay, Sheldon's tuned on 2 software-defined receivers online. One in Chile on 7360, one in Argentina to 9455, waiting for the BBC tests. So here, 9455 is here. And what I'll do, just in case, I'll tune off. I hear a very, very faint carry in sideband. I hear a very faint carry on 9455. So, but there doesn't seem to be anything. It's that kind of time of day that nothing on 7360. Anybody getting anything as we're apparently having tests on 7360, 9455 for the BBC's winter broadcast? Eddie SX, nice to have you on board from Sarnia, Ontario. VA3BUF. Oh, there is definitely a carrier. I'm hearing it here. It's not very strong, but it's here. I also hear it very faint, 7360. I hear it very, very faint. 9455 and 7360. It's barely making, it's making a line here on my SDR. They just signed on. So it's there, but it's not very strong. But it's definitely there. Plus, Zero says cancel radio stuff. Replace it with A&W root beer. And cod sandwich. Richard Cook's got Vatican Radio on 7360. What else do we have? Yeah, and by the way, when you ask a question, remember that I could be several minutes back on the chat room. I might be several minutes, you know, I'm sometimes 10, 15 minutes behind. I try to catch up. Al Mason, nice to have you on board. Yeah, and they give it, that's also something that makes it good, Al Mason, is that the root beer is served in a frosty mug also, for sure. Sakura DX, I like root beer, but here in Japan, we rarely find any of that kind of beverage, except for Dr. Pepper. Oh, interesting. PLF Radio at 7205, Radio France International, quite strong. Hey, Bro Weaver, nice to have you here. Yes, don't worry. I totally understand, but we will have. I will have my separate analog and digital radios for sure. How many Sam? I haven't transmitted in over 20 years. Just listens mostly. Plus, as I am one, I have been licensed for 30 years, and I spend way more time listening than talking. D1 DJK says in ham, but I'm ham but inactive. Shall I send you my license? I don't need it anymore. Yeah, Larry goes on radio locator and determines which signals are very strong to the QTH. Absolutely, that's what he does. Kevin Wood, Pirate reported 6891 on the East Coast. 6891. Not sure if it's my mind playing tricks or not, but not sure. Keegan says, my dad, W9JEF, has been licensed since 1954. Sheldon Harvey, nothing yet. Vatican Radio just signed off. I do have 9455. It's very weak, but it's there. But it's in the noise. But I got it on both my ICOM and my RSP1A SDR. Hey, Matthew Kinney, thank you very much. Nice to have you on board. W4EEY, some good class videos. There's a lot of ham and of different radio channels that I look at stuff from time to time. Kelvin Morgan says, becoming a fully fledged radio amateur is a game changer. I think that your YouTube channel will become bigger and more in depth. You're going to have a lot of fun building antennas. I know I did. Yeah, and I know it's going to change somewhat of the content because being an amateur radio operator will, of course, bring amateur radio videos to the channel. So it'll be more of a mix. And for those that are scared, because I get that all the time, people saying, well, I hope that doesn't mean you're going to back off of shortwave stuff. No, it won't. Don't worry, guys. Madam Valley, something popped up, 9455. Radio Week signal work. Nice to have you on board. Just came online at 9455. Richard Cook's got 7360. 7360. What else do we have? Rufus Newt have it here too. Brian Penny says 9455 S8 BBC News on Cape Cod. Wow, nice. Sean Harvey says both transmitters just came online, 7360, 9455. What else do we have? Well, you know, it's D1DJK is kind of an interesting part of radio. I mean, I find it absolutely normal that people that watch my live shows and my videos will ask me if I have a ham license, because I had so many ham radio operators over the years say, you know, you have more radio knowledge than so many ham radio operators that have their licenses. You should be a ham radio operator. And I do understand that. And it does give, I don't know, some kind of notoriety, saying, well, you know, I'm also an ham radio operator. If you're a radio guy, you're a radio guy all the way. Not just listening, you're also transmitting, you know. It's not an obligation. And I mean, some radio listeners will stay radio listeners all of their lives, honestly, you know. Sheldon Arby says 7360, very strong in Chile. Mika Almaj has 9455, good here, nothing on the other frequencies. The D1DJK says, I know hams in my region went back to CB because it's more fun. Yeah, it all depends on what you want to do, honestly. PLF radio is 9455, very strong. Trophy Bavaria, 9455, 9 plus 40. David says, come on, Joe, I'm waiting for you. I'm actually getting the transmitter side of my station ready. Just need to experiment a bit more. I'm going to be there. Don't worry. Casper Peterson, nice to have you on board, my friend. And he's got the BBC. Sam picked up an RTL SDR. SDR Sharp works good for FM band. HGSDR works for HF, but not FM. Weird. Because you got to put an offset. You have to put the correct offset, Sam. On the RTL SDR, there's an offset you need to add. So the offset needs to be off on FM and on when you try HF. It's because that offset is already part of SDR Sharp for some reason. So there's really an offset you need to do. No problem, Keegan. JDX 9455 S9. Radio weak signal work. Do you have any receiver protection in line with any of your radios? Great shows as always. Pat K7LNP. If you're talking about any protection for lightning, stuff like that, I disconnect when there's chances of thunderstorms. Of course, if I will be at some point transmitting, I will have disconnections of the receivers while transmitting, as not to blow out the radios. That's pretty much what I have on the power. On the power side of things, I've got really expensive power bars that have protections. But honestly, as an electronics guy, I know that these protections are very limited, and there's a lot of overhype on what really protects you from power surges and stuff like that. PLF Radio says, I have a Radio France International very strong 7205, but lots of fading. It is totally possible that you have fading because you're very close to the transmitter, PLF Radio. But and there's a lot of fading. Sometimes fading can really happen really fast. D1 DJK 9455, 5 out of 5 signal. Wow. It used to, Kelvin Morgan, I used to be a big fan of building antennas all the time. In the 80s, I think in the summertime, I would create and do so many types of antennas and try all sorts of things and plug my radio to the metal ramp of the fence and try so many things just to see, does that work? Is that better? Is that worse? I remember one of the things I love to do, and that was very geeky, I gotta say. It's the geekiest thing you can do as a teenager, but one of my best friends also had a DX100. He had purchased one. Well, his dad had purchased one because when he saw mine, he was like hooked. It was just so amazing. And what I would do is when I had my Navajo base station for CB, for 8 channels, the TRC 432, I would design antennas, and I would ask him. He lived like 4 streets down. So my signal was, he would hear me, but not always very strong. And I was obsessed. I was like, what could I do to make a better antenna? So I would create antennas, and I would key up and talk a little bit and say, hey, can you hear me? And, on the S meter, what's the level on the S meter? And I remember once I created an L-shaped antenna. And I had cut the antenna so that it was, I think it was half wave or something like that. I'm trying to remember. I'm just trying to think what I did. And I had seen that, I don't know, in a magazine or something. And it was, they were saying in the magazine it was very directional. So I had pointed in the direction of my friend living 4 streets down. And I remember he would hear me like S1, S3, S4, around there. And I remember keying up and him on the phone saying, oh my God, what? You're S9. And I was like, wow, I'm S9. Wow, that is such a great antenna. And I was like, so thrilled. But, when you're 15-year-old and you do that, you're kind of geeky, actually. It's like, what did you do at your weekend? Oh, I created a CB antenna that is L-shaped, so I can actually be heard better by my best friend. No, I would not say that in school. I was like, well, I had a great weekend and had fun. I don't know about you guys. I did talk a little bit about radio when I was young. And I remember in French class, we had a 20-minute bit where we had to talk about our favorite hobby. And I had listened to, I had actually talked about shortwave. And I remember everybody being amazed because I had these, letters from Radio Moscow and QSL cards, and people were like so amazed that I would receive correspondence from everywhere in the world, especially back then, getting a letter from the USSR, from East Germany or from communist countries that were Czechoslovakia and Romania and so on was just amazing. So basically, I did talk about it, and then everybody was amazed. But in my general life in high school, I was not too much talking about it. People knew I was kind of a geek. A lot of people would knew I had a CB radio and stuff like that, computer. They knew I was kind of a geek, but I wasn't very, I wasn't. When I was with some of the friends in school, it was like more of a chill thing and not too much geeky radio stuff. I always tell everybody I'm kind of an hybrid guy, because in a geek place I'll be totally geek, and a normal social place I'll be a total social place guy, having fun with everybody and not being geek at all. It's funny because I got a friend of mine that's geeky, just amazing, and we talk sometimes. And I'm like, "You're such a nerd," and he just laughs and he says, "Look who's talking." And I said, "Yeah, I know," but when you look at some of these people, sometimes in social events, and he's an example. In a social event, he's like not there, And I remember one day he told me, he says, "You know what? You're such a social guy. You got kind of adapted into, when you're with geeks and you're geeky. But when you're with regular folks that have no idea what technology is all about, you just fit in." And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of learned how to fit in with everyone. And I remember him telling me, and I was kind of surprised. One night he said, "I wish I'd be like you." And I said, "What do you mean?" "I mean, you talk to everybody and adapt to every conversation that you see. And I can't do that. I'm just kind of frozen and don't know what to talk about." And I always told him, I said, "Look, you know what you got to do? You gotta listen first. You listen. There's always a little place somewhere in a conversation where they're going to talk about something where you can actually find a way to sneak in. I mean, you don't push yourself in. I don't, just go to a conversation and just hey, you listen." And that's what I do. I listen, and I will insert myself somewhere where I feel comfortable talking about a subject. But I don't know. I guess it's not everybody. So I always say to everybody as a joke, I am a geek that is socially adapted. Oh, man. Yes, Sheldon, I like that. We have 2 ears but 1 mouth, so listening is twice as important as talking. Unfortunately, a lot of people talk more than they listen, and they look like idiots. PLF radio signal 87 dB unit, SN signal noise ratio 25 dB, 9455 kilohertz on the XH data D808. Rob Fiducia, nice to have you on board, Rob, from Phoenix, Arizona. Mark Cope has nothing on 9455 in Dallas. 9455 Warferton and 7360 Ascension Islands. Pretty good. Mesa 9455, dead in Central Ohio. It's not very strong here, actually, in Montreal, honestly. It's in the noise. Yeah, Mesa, look at that. The RTL SDR needs an offset. So when you're on shortwave, you need to put that offset to activate the offset. When you're on VHF, UHF, you got to remove the offset. And you'll see it's going to work. I know it depends on the RTL SDR you got. Some are 40 megahertz. One that I've used is 40 megahertz. Another one I used was, I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I know one of them that was 40 megahertz. And you got to activate it for shortwave, and you got to remove it for VHF, UHF. And that RTL SDR needs to be needs to be made to receive shortwave also. D1 DJK got both very good. 9455 7360 on the Electronics S350DL. Telescopic antenna. Ray Kelly says 9455 the best here, followed by 7360. Yeah, they're beamed towards Antarctica, absolutely. Oh, that's for sure. If I go amateur radio operator on my Sam, I'm going all the way. I'm getting the top-notch license, so I can do everything everywhere like I want. Absolutely. No, I'm in Canada, but here we have, I think we have two different licenses. There's kind of a general license and an extra one. Bill, W3WDR, nice to have you on board. Yeah, kind of normal that Wolverton skips UK most of the time, Richard. So close. Yeah, the U1DJK. That's the biggest problem with a country that has some transmitters. One of those problems I had was with Radio Canada International. Radio Canada International, I was often the Sackville, New Brunswick, because Sackville, New Brunswick wasn't that far from Montreal, so it would often skip over, and I just couldn't listen to some of the broadcasts from Radio Canada International via Sackville, because they would just jump over Montreal. X30763X, nice to have you on board. 9455, got audio loud and clear. Cool. So the test is pretty much over now. What else do we have? What else do we have? So going down. Going down. Yep, it was a 15-minute test. Killer Radio's got BBC 7310, very strong. Hey, buen amigo. ¿Cómo está mi amigo? Nice to have you on board. Rob Fiducia says, thanks for the old story. It's always fun to think of our past and what we did. Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things I would have, when we think about, radio. Okay, Almeida, it's good. There's an offset to put for the HF. Rob Fiducia, can we still get a strong signal even if we cannot add our own antenna on our roof or balcony? You know what? I'm just going to say hello, Carl Krogman. Nice to have you here. KD9LTQ, welcome aboard. John McClure, nice to have you here, my friend. So, you know what, Rob? The question of a signal is depending on two things. Of course, a good antenna is part of it. But in our day and times that we are right now, low noise is probably your savior. So what's happening is that you might have pretty good reception, even with very small antennas, if your noise level where you live and where you are listening is actually low. And that's the big question. Is the noise level low where you are? If it is, you know what? I remember when I was listening with the DX100 when I was young, there was no noise back then. 20 feet of wire stuck to my ceiling with tape would actually give me Radio Australia and tons of signals everywhere. So if you don't have a lot of noise, a very short antenna, even indoors, can sometimes play magic. But it will also be dependent on how it's built, where you live, and how the house or apartment where you are is built. But you know what? With just a small balcony antenna, or piece of wire, you can already often get very good signals. But once again, it'll all be dependent on how much noise you've got where you live. And that will be more important, honestly. We are in times when actually knowing where the noise is the lowest is more important than the biggest antenna you can get. But of course, yes, you'll get more signal on a bigger antenna, a long wire, or whatever. But you can get strong signals of many stations. And an example of that is if you look at my videos, I got a lot of little portable receivers with just the telescopic. And the telescopic is enough for me to fetch out a lot of the signals from like Radio Romania and Voice of Turkey and Voice of Vietnam. Voice of Vietnam recording this week with my Ethon Mini was just with the little short, it was like this long. The antenna is like this long. And the signal was booming in. So it's really, do you have a lot of noise where you are? That will answer that question. That might kill your reception. And that is the bad thing of our hobby today. It's the darn noise we get everywhere. 7285 booming in. 7285. Am I hearing 7285? There's something there in the noise. Is my loop getting it better? Pretty much in the noise here too. 7285 is a little early here because we still have almost 3 hours to go before the sun sets. I mean, we are in the longest days of the year now. I mean, in a week's time, the longest day is going to happen. So we're kind of there. And after that, the signal, the days are going to start to get shorter. Incredible how time flies and how things go. D1DJK, Radio Canada International in English is once a week on 3985 kilohertz from the German transmitter. Yeah, I remember seeing that. David Arden says, hey, how about giving me a thumbs up? Yeah, why not? What I think of the new ELAD FDM S3. You know what? I've never used Shortwave Bavaria, the ELADs. But I hear so much positive things about the ELADs. So, I'd be surprised that it's not good. Then again, everything is possible, but I'm pretty sure that must be something very, very good. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about it, but Shady Pyro 90, does Radio Canada International still issue QSL cards? I don't know. I have no idea, honestly. I really have no idea, honestly. Take care, PLF Radio. Fais attention à toi. Et à vendredi prochain, 20h, ton universel. Et peut-être, entre-temps, si je fais une émission au hasard. Alors, bonne soirée et bonne nuit. Bon week-end, Monsieur PLF Radio. J'espère que vous avez aimé votre expérience avec nous. Rufus Newt says, I'm very rural. However, they replaced the only street light with an LED. Totally understand, but the RFI is amazing. Oh, you've seen a difference in RFI? They've replaced the street here 6 months ago. I was actually doing YouTube videos, and I saw a truck pass by, and saw the guy removing the old light and putting in that new LED light. Sorry, LCD, yeah. And I can't say I've seen a difference in noise here, at least. Unless there's some of the buzzing that I see here and that might be coming from that. But I've not really seen any difference here, so I don't know. Sorry, guys. So, you know, it's, I don't know. But, you know, every time there's a change like that, it's always something you got to think about. Could, you know, that induce more noise than before? It's not impossible. I am happy for one thing, because the old ones, which were the sodium lamps that were kind of very bright yellow, kind of yellowish, they were actually, when I was sitting on my balcony at night, I had that in my face because it's just on the other side of the street. The ones that they put in actually send the light really, really down on the street, so it's much darker here at the level that I live, in the 3rd floor of my building. Rob, yep, noise levels. That's really the thing. That's really the thing that is the problem, the noise levels. Absolutely. Rob. Shortwave Bavaria lives where we all want to live. Alone, no neighbors, no noise, no nothing. Except radio signals everywhere. Cuban Lady on 10715. Let's check it out. 10715. Let's try it out here. It's going to be interesting to compare. Got an S6 signal here. I got a S7 signal here. Which one is barely visible on the display there. Yet it's going to be interesting to see if we hear anything better. But it's interesting because it's barely visible on my sloper, but it actually packs in an S8 signal, almost S9 with my W6 LVP loop. There's just no audio yet. It's going to be interesting to compare that when something happens, or if we hear something. So, Madame Bali got a burst of French from Radio Gilles there. Hey, welcome back, Keegan. Rob says, I was considering using SDR Uno. Do you recommend RSP1 or a RSP2 Pro? Not even sure I can use them with my noise level. If they're all good, and if you're not really sure, the RSP1A is actually very, very, very good. So you won't be spending as much money in case you're not happy, and you will have an amazing device. The RSP2 Pro and Duo have more capabilities. I'm not sure they're necessarily better at receiving. I would have to compare those to really know. But for those that are using our SP2 Pro or have been using RSP1A and others, apart from more features, would you say the RSP1A performs as well as the other ones? That's an interesting question. Radio Exterior de España, 9690, English. Here we go.
Back in 1994, the very first edition of one of the early music festival began with Baroque and Rococo symphonies and sonatas by Fuchs in Telemann,
so that's
and the Claire performed by
on the sloper.
Since then, literally hundreds of musicians and singers have visited.
That's on the loop. It's not as good on this loop.
Which, after more than
There's kind of some noise on my loop. There's something I need to check out.
date on Spain's classical music calendar.
And Sloper seems to be doing better here for some reason. We'll need to check out some of that stuff. There are things happening.
To welcome a Capital's founder and welcome.
I'm gonna have to check that out. There are things to check out for sure. Um,
26 years is a long time, so let me say that congratulations for your perseverance of more than a quarter of a century.
what do we have?
Congratulations.
Mickey Delmash, as mentioned by Mark Montgomery a few weeks back via their German relay, they do not have QSL cards anymore to QSL these broadcasts from Germany. So Radio Canada International does not have QSLs anymore. You know, considering that that these broadcasts are mostly internet now, except for that relay, kind of makes you think. So Spain in English 96.90. And by the way, if you want to do a little donation, guys, if you like what I do, PayPal.me/shortwave or the Yahoo email that I'm posting here. You can send me a little something to help me out, to help me pay for that $500 antenna, for the lighting systems, for the expensive internet that I'm actually paying for because I need to have better internet connectivity to do these live shows. I mean, this operation costs some money. I'm here every Fridays, and also, this is my living. So if you want to help me out, it's always welcome. And thanks for those that have donated. And I'm trying to reach out. If you never donated, why not think about a little something? Would be very welcome. Shortwave Bavaria says the best SDR I've ever owned was the Micro Telecom Perseus. Ray Kelly says RSP1A rocks. It does. It's amazing. Elton Byington, Gilles, recently you posted a waterfall scan that strange V-shaped traces. Did you figure out what they were? Elton, these are ionospheric heating experiments done by the Arecibo site in Puerto Rico. So there's HARP in Alaska, and HARP in Alaska have been doing some tests. If you guys follow Chris Fallon on Twitter, you know when these tests might happen. University of Alaska Fairbanks also. But there's a second place where they do ionospheric heating experiments, and it's where the Arecibo telescope, the radio telescope exists. They do some ionospheric heating experiments from Puerto Rico also. So these V-shaped signals, and actually this week there were different types of signals. Yesterday was different also. On 5125 kilohertz are really ionospheric heating experiments. They're trying to modify the ionosphere in some ways to see what they can do with megawatt signals. I don't know if it's. Let's just check 5125 right now. Anything there? It is there right now. If you go on 5125, it's just a carrier tonight. It's not very strong because it's early, but 5125 definitely has a carrier. So it's a S7 here on the S7, S8, S7, S8, both on sloper and on the loop antenna. So that comes out of Puerto Rico, and that's going to stay on for part of the night. It's actually been interfering a lot with WBCQ on 5130. The only reason a lot of people noticed it, by the way, is, and I've seen that on many Facebook groups, a lot of people noticed it because it was interfering with WBCQ that they would listen to, which kind of was interesting. So it's there's a lot about that happening. And by the way, thanks to everybody for the emails. Thanks for the email. I didn't see your email, Sheldon, for the BBC test, but you've posted it in the group, so thanks for the info. So a lot of the people that actually were really wondering what that was and hearing the signal were people complaining that WBCQ was being, for some reason, there was some kind of jamming. Sam is on 9690. No problem, Rob. But I think if you want to try one, try the RSP1A. It performs amazingly well. And I'm not even drunk yet. And a beer and a half in in 2 hours. It's not enough. So it's an amazing product, the RSP1A, and if you have, you'll be happy with it, and it'll let you, it lets you see what, how well you can receive or not. Like I said, it will be really, really mostly the noise that's going to decide, honestly, if it works well or not. Joe Sombra Newhouse, nice to have you on board from Sao Paulo, Brazil. I used to live in a low noise environment. It was so sad. What else do we have? Lee Burkett, nice to have you on board using a scanner at the moment. What scanner do you have? Rob says, so living in the country in a house gives us the best control for good antenna and likely low noise levels. Yeah, there's a lot of things. You got if you have a house, if you have a house instead of living in an apartment like I do, that's one thing. It's not necessarily going to tell you that it's low noise though, because I did a few tests here by going into the neighbors' yards. Here's an apartment, a 6-apartment building. The rest of the street is little houses. And all over the area, there's a lot of noise here. There's something creating noise here that I'm wondering if it goes beyond just the houses, just the people. I suspect that the cabling here of the Bell telephone and the fiber optic stuff is emitting a lot of noise, and so it doesn't mean that you'll be better off, but of course if the neighbors are far away, you gotta think that these neighbors and the noise that they create will be far away also, so there will be less noise in your area. But go live in the middle of the forest where there's nobody around, and you'll see it's perfect. What else do we have? Lee Burkett, 15 years old. Cool. Or food for Paul the Cat. Absolutely, Rob, you're right. It could be for everything, even food for Paul the Cat. Gerald Sombra Newhouse. Discovered what kind of raw TTY signal was receiving every night on 4207. Maritime cargo ships info. Oh, nice. Have you been able to decode it? Or it's encrypted? Or do you have any decoding of it? Matamba, I wonder if the Arecibo engineers got as much grief from the nuts as does Harp. Probably they do. Probably they do. I like Chris Paulin's humor. because he always shares the nut job comments about harp and how it's controlling our minds and everything. Capital City and Professionals, nice to have you on board. Nothing official for the ARRL Field Day, and by the way, we can talk a little bit about it. Next week is Amateur Radio Field Day, which is a fun thing because it's there to promote how amateur radio can be of help in situations where, emergency situations. Because there are rules where you are supposed to operate a little bit like if you were in a emergency moment. So you got to set up rigs and set up, homemade antennas and powered from solar power or car battery or whatever. And it's always fun. And it's happening next week, actually, Saturday and Sunday, June 22nd and 23rd. So tune in to ham bands, and it's everywhere. It's not just HF. It's also just looking at something here. It's also VHF, UHF. It's on every ham band except the warg bands, I believe. So lots of stuff happening, and there could be a lot of activity in local clubs. So look at your local clubs around you, because I remember 2-3 years ago, they had set up in a park not far from where I live here, and there were 6 or 7 guys with their rig set up in the middle of a park and showing all, how they broadcast on HF with their rigs and everything, and what amateur radio is all about, and how it can help in emergency service, time as emergency services. We have here our greatest example of that is at when there were the ice storms of 1998. Amateur radio was a big, big help. And that's a side of amateur radio not a lot of people actually know about. So, but I don't have anything special yet. Could there be a surprise show? Yeah, absolutely. But for now, it depends what I'll have to do next weekend, honestly. Take care, D1 DJK. It's nice to have you on board. And take care with that back of yours. Take care, Matt. Nice to have you on board, as usual. Next show, next official show is next Friday on Summer Solstice, June 21st at 2000 UTC. Shortwave Bavaria is a 5125 S9 plus 20 dB in Germany, only carrier. It is Arecibo. Shortwave Bavaria, there's pretty much only that on that frequency that can really pop in such a big signal, for sure. So that is Arecibo. Hopefully they'll put tones or stuff. Yesterday also was only a carrier with there's kind of a I don't know, it's some kind of weird dot or weird pop every once in a while, but yesterday was just a carrier also. Take care of that back, my friend. Terry Cook says Arecibo Observatory also uses 8175. Are they both at the same time, Terry? Do you know? Let me just check at 175 right here to see if I hear anything. Because I know that they're at 8 megahertz, but I haven't heard any other frequencies being used except 5125 here, which is up to S9 here. I'm getting up to an S9 carrier here. Rob says, interesting house versus apartment for the noise levels. Wonder if the electronics in the area. You know, a lot of the noise do probably come from utility around you. Remember, there's the lighting in the streets, and there's all the services, cable, phone, and whatever other services around you. There's a lot of stuff that can create noise that is you're not even possible to, to do anything about. The Shortwave Bavaria says the answer to your problems is PLC power LAN communication. It's a cancer in Germany. I suspect that I was saying earlier, my loop is about a feet from Bell Canada phone and fiber optics cable, and I really suspect that there's noise coming out of there. And I suspect it's a big chunk of the noise I get also. But it's amazing how noisy it is here. I mean, when compared to where I lived before, it's just crazy. Take care, Elton Byington. Nice to have you on board as usual. Jerry DX, that would be a dream come true, living in the middle of the forest. Oh, man. Roughest Dude doesn't want to go through 1998 again. Oh, that was crazy. That was crazy. 1998 showed that a big city like Montreal and can really come down to its knees when Mother Nature decides it's just let's go crazy. Miles Fisher, nice to have you here. Says love your show. Been shortwave listening for 30 years. Lexington, Kentucky. Lots of noise here too. Unfortunately, noise is really killing our hobby, unfortunately. Shortwave Bavaria. I have a pop. Yes, that's right. Nice. It must be a Recibo. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a Recibo, my friend. Hey, Fastload. Nice to have you on board. So 5125 is the carrier from the Arecibo tests. Ayman Al-Shgan. I want to good receive from long places. How? It depends what you want to receive. Shortwave or medium wave. And what radio you have also. Daniel Holmes. Nice to have you here. Have you already said that a good way to do RF noise checking and for neighborhoods too? Yep, using a portable receiver is the best that you could do. You take a little portable receiver, put it on the AM band or on the low part of the HF spectrum, 345 megahertz, and go around. But on the AM band it's cool because the ferrite inside, or the ferrite, depending on whoever wants me to pronounce it in whatever way, is very directional. So it lets you, and it gives you the possibility to pinpoint where the noise is coming from, and you can go around, and check out where the noise comes from. Okay, you got a Sony ICF receiver. One of the very cheap things that I have is a Texan AN200 loop that you can couple with it. It's $30 loop, and it actually is pretty amazing on making signals on the AM band better. As for shortwave listening, you know what? Try putting a wire outdoors and try to find a way to put it that there's the least noise possible. But an outdoor wire, an outdoor antenna will often be something you'll want to have. Terry Cook, in general, approximately 8175 transmissions will occur during daylight hours between 1830 and 22. Oh, okay. Thanks, Terry, for the interesting information. Take care, McGlone. It's nice to have you on board. Shortwave Bavaria. Those in Arecibo must have real power at the moment with pop tones. They do heat up the ionosphere, so that means that they are really pumping a huge amount of power up there, or down there in Puerto Rico. Hey, Max Strong, nice to have you on board. Branson W, nice to have you on board. Thank you for videos with Grunding, great. I also caught Hart Broadcasting in Czech Republic. Thank you for your videos. Great. And cool. Paul in the Czech Republic. Nice to have you here, my friend. Dr. Sisop, nice to have you on board. 10 and 11 meters skip active. It was active a little earlier. Let's check it out here. 27025. What's happening on 27025? Nothing. Nothing happening much here from now. Daniel Holmes, AM receiver with telescopic antenna frequency again. For our Arecibo, it's 5125 kilohertz. 5125 kilohertz. Talking about an S9 signal here. Is a carrier, and I believe there's a pop. If you listen to it carefully, there's become a pop every minute or so or something. So this is ionospheric eating experiments that are happening on from Arecibo, Puerto Rico. Sorry, I got distracted by a text message from from a friend of mine. Yeah, so 5125 kilohertz. Chester Johnson, when listening to shortwave, how can one tell what is best, AM or single sideband, lower sideband, upper sideband? Listening to 93.95 and the signals sound okay on either. Okay. General, and by the way, it's a good question because it's one of those questions that a lot of people don't really know exactly. So there are two types of signals on shortwave. There will be AM signals coming from the international broadcast bands, roughly. And there will be utility and ham signals, well, three types of signals. These are mostly in single sideband mode. So when you're listening to an international broadcast band, where you should hear radio stations, all of that is in AM mode. All of that. So 93.95 is WRMI, and it is in AM mode. Lower sideband, upper sideband is for either amateur radio listening or utility station signals listening. That is a different mode of transmission, and usually it's outside the international broadcast bands. So you'll have the amateur bands where the kind of the big rule is above 10 megahertz is upper sideband, below 10 megahertz is lower sideband, except 60 meter band, 5 megahertz, exception to the rule at upper sideband. I don't know why, but that's it. Utility signals, weather broadcast stations, all sorts of signals coming off of, anything else that's pretty much anything that's outside the international broadcast band. So knowing where the international broadcast bands is actually a good thing. It will be in upper sideband most of the time. There's some lower sideband stuff there also, but so general rule is roughly almost everything in the international broadcast bands, the radio stations, AM, SSB, pretty much everything else. There are exceptions to the rule, I gotta say, but that's pretty much what you'll have. Now, you say you don't hear it well either on sideband or on AM. That could have to do with, signal being weak or propagation not being good, noise around you, and all of that. So that's also possible. So Shortwave Bavaria says Germany Sputnik E also active. Cool. 11 meters open, 10 meters also. Cool. Dr. Sisop, what is on 5985 lower sideband? Sounds like RTTY. Yeah, there's a RTTY signal around there. 5985 E2. Yeah, it's very strong here. This is a radio teletype signal, honestly. And I believe it's an encrypted one. So this is radio teletype 5984 upper sideband, or roughly. No problem, Chester. Always here to help and talk about it. It's radio teletype, but I believe it's an encrypted radio teletype signal. Let's check it out here. 4985. Oh, this is a radio teletype signal. Radioactive. I think the reason that 60 meters is upper sideband is because U.S. federal agencies only transmit in USB. Amateur radio on that band is secondary use only. Yeah, it's possible. By doing upper sideband, you're making sure that you're not, you're listening in and not interfering with something else. No, I don't think it's decodable. I think that is one of those signals that's encrypted. Let's, whoops, that's the wrong app. Let's, just out of curiosity, we're just gonna look at the RTTY here and see if we can, okay, RTTY, if I can find RTTY in that messy, RTTY, that sounds like RTTY 75. So let me just check it out here. RTTY 75, that is very wide. This is an 850 shift. Where is the shift? So space mark, yeah, that's RTTY-M. Well, that's different. RTTY 75 or 50. The shift isn't good. Why the hell do you change the shift mode? Oh, here we go. 850 Hertz is what I want. So that's an 850 Hertz. So I got the shift correct. Let's put it at 75. I was supposed to get RYs now. Let's see if I get anything. So that shift, yeah, sounds more like a 50 baud. Really nothing to decode in this thing. Pretty much random stuff. This is probably encoded. It's probably encrypted. I haven't seen anybody. Really decode that one. And by the way, every radio teletype signal or digital signal is in upper sideband. RTTY is always in upper sideband, Dr. Sisop. Every digital mode is upper sideband by default. Well, that's not Stanag, Matambali. That's really radio teletype here. Stanak does not sound like that. Yeah, Rob, really cool. Yeah, most of the time it's upper sideband, but if you do lower sideband, you got to invert or reverse the decoding. But everything is usually in upper sideband. Richard Berter, nice to have you on board from Cincinnati, Ohio. Yeah, because that's you hear on a lower sideband because you're tuned on higher. Because typically what happens, okay, and that's another thing that's of interest here that some of you might not know. So okay, we're hearing a radio teletype, okay? It's here. I'm going to use this one to check it out. So if I zero in reality, it's kind of centered around 4985. The thing is when we tune a signal like the radio teletype, or you want to decode weather facts, we use upper sideband, and we kind of detune a little bit down. So I'm 4985. About a kilohertz and a half, roughly. And then you adjust yourself on the waterfall of the decoding software. So you're always a little down. The frequency you read when you're decoding a teletype signal is an offset frequency. It's not the actual frequency of the transmission. That's why some receivers have a mode called FSK. My Kenwood R5000 had a mode called FSK. And FSK was frequency shift keying. It's the type of transmission that these do. And FSK, when you tune a signal, if you have FSK mode on the radio, it will actually show you the actual frequency you're listening to. Where if you tune it in upper sideband like I do, you're always 1.5 kilohertz below the actual frequency of the transmission. You can get it on lower sideband also, Dr. Sisop. It doesn't matter. Look, if I put my ICOM in lower sideband, so I'm in upper sideband, 4983.7. Let me go in lower sideband. Now I'll go to 4986. I'll go above the frequency because lower sideband, okay? Imagine the image. Lower sideband, lower than the actual frequency. So you're tuning on your radio above its actual frequency. So that's why you're listening to it in lower sideband, below the actual frequency you're tuned to. Put your radio in upper sideband and tune down, and you'll hear it again, but on a different frequency, slightly below. These signals, you can listen to them in lower or upper sideband. It's just that if you want to decode the okay, that's interesting, Matambali. I'm coming to that in a few seconds. You're making me learn something here. So if you decode digital signals, you got to be in upper sideband. Digital signals across the bands are being are decoded in upper sideband all the time. If you're using lower sideband and you're a Texan, unless you use the reverse mode of the software, you won't be able to actually decode it, because you're not the tones are inverted because you're not in the correct mode. But it's normal that you'll hear it in lower sideband or upper sideband. It's just that you got to tune everything in upper sideband in digital modes if you want to decode them right. So Stanak 4481 is like RTTY, and it's a synchronous FSK mode which uses KG584 encryption. Okay, well, I learned something now. Thanks for sharing, Matambali. Thanks for sharing. Didn't Madam Bali share that? Madam Bali said, I think Madam Bali shared where it was from, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to, or he shared information at least. It could be government, it could be military, it could be a lot of stuff, actually. Honestly. Davidsonville, MD Joel. So, you know. So it's probably from the U.S. AFANSS. Because it's here. I can hear 4985 24 hours, and since that's a low frequency, it means that it has to be. It can't be very, very far from where I live, in order to be heard like at noon on 4985. Hey Brady, KJ7GFT. It's coming. It's coming. You're gonna see. I'm gonna have my ham taken soon. Don't worry about it. Terry Cook says, Angel Vasquez, WP3R, the head of telescope operations and spectrum manager at Arecibo, said a QSL for reception reports may be had for a self-addressed stamped envelope to KP4AO Club Station QSL Manager W3HNK. Oh, cool. Thanks for sharing. Kind of nice. Matambali says traditionally RTTY operators used LSB below 10, and then there was a shift to using USB over the past few decades. Yeah, I don't think you can take the test online here in Canada, Dr. Sissup. So the reverse button used to get worn out. But it's something that you got to use to. I mean, I remember the first time I tried to decode signals. There's all of that to grasp. Understanding the lower upper sideband stuff. Understanding that if you're tuning lower sideband, an RTTY signal, you might not be able to decode it unless you use the reverse button because you've inverted the tones. It's the fun of learning how to decode signals, actually, over time. WWV on 15 megahertz. Let me check it out here. Not very strong, but it's there. They're both on both of my receivers, and I can. I'm not sure. I think I heard the voice. No, I can't. It's not yet. And my clock is perfect. My clock is perfect. Yeah, they do make good propagation beacons. That's for sure. That's for sure. Nathan Valley says, agreed, absolutely drove me nuts for a time, switching shifts, speeds, and mark. And I remember getting discouraged at switching everything and not being able to decode one darn letter or whatever. And then one day, and you spend a hell of an amount of time trying to decode it. And then one day you just press 2 buttons, do this and that, and it's like everything's decoding. And it's like, okay, I spent half an hour. I couldn't decode anything. And now I just take 2 minutes and everything is on the screen and decoding like there was no tomorrow. Yes, David Hart, it's a very timely station. Joseph Ivankovich Jr., nice to have you on board, says you should do a 12-hour radio show marathon. I could listen to you for hours. By the way, I'll talk about a little something. Without getting into the details yet. So I've started a GoFundMe page. Nobody knows about it yet. Don't search for it yet. In the next couple of weeks, I'll be promoting it. The GoFundMe page will be used only for shortwave broadcasts. So what does that mean? I got a couple of ideas of shortwave broadcasts, either via WRMI, WBCQ, or WWCR, and maybe others that want to sell transmitter time. The GoFundMe will be used only for that purpose, and what it will be is me being on the air and maybe something else. I need to talk to some people first, but it would be an hour-long weekly transmission on shortwave. And so I'm working on the details, and I'll be, of course, talking about these details when they are official. And it's part of me wanting to have at least one and maybe more. It will depend how the GoFundMe goes and how everything goes. But it will be there to promote and help me get a radio show on the air. So part of it will be my radio show. I'll be doing a show every week. At least once, maybe with repeats, depends on how things go. But there possibly will be something else, but that I can't talk about right now. So more details soon, okay? In the next month or so, where I'm going to have all the details worked out. I've actually sent out on all the stations of BBCQ, WWCR, and WRMI the rates for an hour, and depending on the frequencies and the power that I want to use, because I want to be heard, so I don't want to use that frequency nobody hears. I want to be on that frequency everybody hears. It costs more money. So anyways, that's just a quick idea here. I'll be getting back to all of you, and you guys will all know about the details within the next month or so of my project. Rufus knew that I can feed the output of my satellite 750 to my computer to decode, but would like an all-in-one solution. This has been so informative. You can, there's so many ways to decode, actually. You can, honestly, I've been plugging my computers in the radios all the time for a while, and lately I've been actually decoding most of the time, just with the, being quiet, just with the microphone of the laptop and stuff, and it works great with just the audio. You just got to keep quiet, not make any noise, but pretty amazing. I've been decoding, yesterday evening was very strong. I've been decoding the Navtex weather and bulletins from Iqaluit, Nunavut, Canada. Been coming in really well. Tune in 0330 UTC on 8415 upper sideband. 8415 upper sideband. And you'll hear NAVDEX, or also called Sitor B. And you can decode the bulletin they send out. So it's kind of cool because, I mean, we don't hear a lot about the northern territories of Canada much. So hearing Nunavut is kind of fun. Bavaria, Shortwave Bavaria says, would like to provide all users on YouTube channel a good web SDR in Central Europe. I will build a web SDR in the near future for my very quiet location. That'd be a lot of fun, actually. Honestly. A lot of fun. Yeah, absolutely, Shortwave Bavaria. Why not? Give your the link to your SDR. Absolutely. Bobby Burgess says, here we go, voice of Shortwave in the works. Yes, it is. It is. It's going to be something, the voice of Shortwave. And there'll be more. I'm trying to see what I can do, but the page is created. So it gives you an idea of how I decided, look, it's time to do something. So the GoFundMe page is there. I need to add more. I need to add more details on the page. I also need to sit down and think about what exactly do I want in that broadcast. Of course, there'll be an EQSL for it for those that listen in. And I don't know, it's going to be my own little thing on the shortwave bands. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. That would be fun, Keegan. Having my show, my audio on a Part 15 AM radio transmitter. Yeah, official shortwave report. I don't know if you guys have an idea of some radio show title or something. David says, oh, that sounds good. The show on shortwave. Yeah. Radioactive says, are you taking over for someone in particular? Not really. Rob says, Joe, that is great news. Your own radio show would be a great idea. Keegan says, my AM radio transmitter transmits on medium wave. I mean, I haven't done AM Part 15 in such a long time. I used to have fun with AM Part 15 when I was young. As a teenager, I had built a small kit, which was in Part 15, but I was illegal because they had said that the wire antenna couldn't be more than 2 or 3 feet long, and I had plugged it on my 100 feet long wire in my backyard. And instead of running it on 6 volts, I would actually run it on 12 volts. So basically, I was breaking the rules. And I was asking all my neighbors, all the friends in my neighborhood, like, do you hear something on 1130 kilohertz? It was just so funny. Well, at least Radioactive, I'm pretty sure you guys would rather have Gilles having so many broadcasts as Brother Stare than having Brother Stare himself. You know, Brother Shortwave. Brother Shortwave. I like that. Brother Shortwave. You know, there should be some parody in it. You guys are giving me an idea. I should parody Brother Stare, but then again, I can't. Nobody will want me on the transmitters. Oh man, that'd be so good. Oh man, Dr. Sisop, FCC now allowing religious commercial free stations in the middle of the FM band. Oh man. Crazy. Radioactive. Gilles, I recently received some NAVTEX from Northern Canada and also from Russia station from Vladivostok on 8416.5. Oh, nice. I need to check that one. Vladivostok. I've never received it. Yes, Canada does have a Part 15 also, Dr. Sisop. We do have an equivalent of Part 15 in Canada. It's 100 milliwatts and a very, very short antenna. Hey, take care, Simon Templar. It's nice to have you on board. So, yeah. So the GoFundMe page will be put up in the next few weeks. It have all the details. My promise to you, of course, is all 100% of the cash will go to Shortwave Broadcasts. Of course, I'll put some of my own money in it. You know, I mean, it's not just up to you guys to fund me for things like that, but you can help me out. And that's going to happen soon. And I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. And I mean, why not? You know, have a shortwave voice of my own. I think that could be a lot of fun. I need to talk to somebody about a couple of details, because there's a few things I need to ask some people about before I can say yeah, it's gonna happen. Sorry, somebody's texting me. Okay, and you know, I think it could be a lot of fun. And we'll see, depending on the funding I have, the amount of money available. You know, it could be a 1 hour, it could be several repeats of the show. For those that miss one show, there would be other possibilities. My first idea would be that I'd like to be on WRMI because it has an amazingly nice coverage. So, you know, we'll be checking that out for sure. So take care, Shortwave Bavaria. There's a chance that could happen before the ham band for sure, Matam Valley. I could be on the shortwave broadcast bands before I'm actually on the shortwave ham bands. That's not impossible, but it all depends. We'll go with the flow and see what happens. You know what, Dr. Sisop, I was thinking about you the other day. You're saying 93, 95 still jammed here. I've been unable to hear 5850 because there's some kind of noise over it, and that's been happening in the past 2-3 weeks. So it's kind of interesting. Hey guys, somebody wants to say hi once again. For those that missed Mr. Paul, here's Mr. Paul the cat saying hello to everybody. Hey, Mr. Paul. How are you, Mr. Paul? How are you, Mr. Paul? Say hi to everyone. So, there's, you know, I want to be on WRMI. I would like to be there. So, anyways, 5850 in the past couple of weeks in the evening, because 5850 was one of my best frequencies for WRMI, honestly. In the past few weeks, it's been very, very noisy. Very, very noisy. So, you know. Yep, Paul doesn't care about the camera, absolutely. He's like, what the hell? Hey, man? Yeah. So, look at the camera, man. You know, I would need to have some food in my hand, and now you would look at the camera. Let's see. Here we go. Yeah, here, look. You're just like, you know, what the hell are you doing with your hand? He looks like, you know, what the hell? Come on. Seriously? What do you want? It's cats. You know, man? Yeah, man. Look at that. Let's make a nice picture for the camera here. Yeah. Yes, that cat really loves me. I can tell you that. It's just amazing. It's possible, Dr. Sisop. I wouldn't be surprised that Cuba could be jamming it. I mean, it probably comes in really well, and maybe 5850 is coming in just too well on the Cuban island. So I wouldn't be surprised. But in the past 2 to 3 weeks, lots of VE2CAT. I like that. VE2CAT. Oh, man. Hey, Jeff Barrett. Nice to have you here. Says that, Paul, you look like his Moses. Yeah. Kind of nice to have everybody here. So, hey guys, I'm just going to share my little PayPal once again. If you guys want to give me a little something, or you know what? Maybe he's not fed enough. Maybe you guys want to help him out. I have a little, a little something, a little food. You can just say, hey, that donation is for food, or that donation is for beer, or hey, I want to help you with your antenna that you just purchased, or hey, I want to help you out with the Shortwave broadcast already. Everything is possible. So paypal.me/shortwave, or the Yahoo email that you see here. Hope that you enjoy our show. We're at 3 hours and 1 minute, guys. Pretty cool. Radioactive, Jill, I would like to hear you on 7780 as well. Where WRMI comes in well to the West Coast on there. Not too bad, not the best, but here in the East Coast. But 7780 does make it. I don't know. Let's try it right now. 7780. He's trying to position himself right now. Yeah, it's actually doing a pretty good signal. Oh man, it's the crazy preacher. It's the crazy preacher guy. I like that. That guy's nuts. That guy is completely nuts. Oh man, listening to that just makes me laugh. The crazy preacher is on 7780 right now. Careful, Paul might take over the funding. 7780 fast load. 7780. The crazy preacher. Oh, nuts. Oh, man. Oh, man. So, hey, guys. I'm going to switch it off for tonight. We've been on for 3 hours and 3 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed the show, as usual. So, starting next week, we there's a possibility at some point I'll have some kind of live show, random live show, like I told you guys. No Saturday shows anymore, for the time being at least. But I was thinking of doing some kind of live show probably sometime next week from outside somewhere. So we're going to check it out. And of course, the next show is on Solstice. You know what? I'm going to think about something. An idea. What could be interesting in Solstice? What could I do special on Solstice Day? The longest day in the Northern Hemisphere. I don't know. We're going to check it out. Dr. Sissom wants to hear Paul purr. He is, actually. I can hear him. I do this. He is totally purring right now. I mean, the guy's totally in love with me. Oh, Paul the cat. So, Thanks, guys, for being here. Thanks for the support. I got a few donations through the show. I want to thank you about it. Firstly, what about Saint Jean on that? That's on Monday, the 24th. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing actually. I have no idea what I'm doing next weekend. I barely know what I'm doing tomorrow. So asking me what I'm going to do at Saint Jean, which is the Quebec's province of Quebec national holiday. I have no idea. Take care, my friends, and I wonder what AM and shortwave will be like in the way north with 24-hour daylight. One of the things that would be so cool, I would like to see, is going like at the North Pole and listening to the bands, medium wave, long wave, and shortwave from there, and seeing what the hell I'm gonna hear. What do we hear, and what do we listen to? That's why I listened to that SDR up in Sweden, because it's past the 60-degree Arctic Circle, and I kind of find it really, really nice to see what I can hear from there, which is kind of interesting. Same for the South Pole, absolutely. I mean, total darkness over there, kind of interesting. So what does it look like? The North Pole is interesting because it have all of Asia and Russia and Europe kind of close by. It is kind of interesting when you think about it because, for example, in the summertime when you listen to 20-meter band in the evening, a lot of European stations actually come over the North Pole, which is kind of interesting. So. Well, it's not all water, Dr. Sisup. Right now, there's still some ice. I mean, we still aren't at that time when there's nothing at all. But, it's kind of tough to be there, basically. So, it's kind of interesting because when you listen to the bulletin of the Iqaluit Maritime Station, they talk about all of the scientific experiments and the scientific buoys that they actually are putting there to see the extent of the ice and everything. I don't know if it's still on. I need to find that. There was a website, and I'm not sure. I think it was sponsored by NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration in the USA. They had live cameras from like 4 or 5 different areas at the North Pole where they actually had some instruments, and you could see you could see like the latest picture every hour or something like that, broadcast or transmitted from there, which was kind of nice. And I don't know if they still do something like that, but it's kind of interesting. One of the things I like to look at is there's a website where you got Arctic ice news, and it gives you an idea of the extent of the Arctic ice and how it's really as the decades and the years go by, as it's really, really melting faster and faster. It's just crazy. So European radios on 9 kHz tuning, be hard to get it on 10 kHz North American tuner. Not really. You just, and portable receivers today, that's the cool thing. You just switch on 9 kHz stuff. Kind of interesting. So, hey, take care, everybody. Hey, Ron Deming, nice to have you here. Used to catch Cambridge Bay Area Air Radio comms with airliners. Not sure if they're still active. I don't know. There's a lot of aerial communications that are still active, even some that aren't really published much, but we need to check that out. I need to check more aeronautical stuff, for sure. Andy Coley, nice to have you here. So, take care, my friends. Hope you enjoy our show. And at least, Maglone, you're back for me saying goodbye. Take care, my friends. It was really, really a lot of fun to be here. Next week, Friday, Solstice Day. That means summer officially in North America, or in the Northern Hemisphere, I should say. Winter in the southern hemisphere. And that will be that. We'll have the show during the broadcast. I guess we'll have the show during the winter solstice broadcast coming out of the BBC. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to check out. So thanks everybody for being here. Love you all. Stay safe. And see you next Friday. Maybe before. Maybe we'll do a random show from somewhere else. Take care, my friends. Love you all. Thanks for those that have donated. Those that have never donated. Think about it. And stay safe. Always fun to have you here. Bye, my friends. And see you soon. And listen to the radio.